But we do start with the blight problem in the city of Detroit and how the city is tackling the problem with some unusual help. I had the chance to take a closer look at the steps the city is taking to tear down blighted buildings and how those living in the neighborhoods are feeling about the changes. A demolition crew at work in northwest Detroit. This one crew will knock down up to 10 houses in a day. Ronald Garrison lives next door to this one, vacant for years. Trespassers looted it of anything of value.
The man down the street boarded it up, and they used to come rip the boards off and still go back in there, and he'd have to come board it up again.
The numbers are in. There are nearly 80,000 dilapidated structures across the city of Detroit. A number so high because of scrappers, vandals tearing everything of value out of vacant properties, leaving them open to the elements. Once there's structural damage, the houses have to come down.
Oh, yeah.
The scrapping is so rampant, Derek Watts says even inhabited homes can be targets.
You have to watch your house even if you go on vacation. You can go on vacation and come back and your house be scrapped. So you got to watch it really 24 hours a day, you know, because that's the thing now. That's the hustle now.
With the city bankrupt and operating under an emergency manager, Detroit's new mayor, Mike Duggan, is focusing on the demolition of the tens of thousands of houses stripped beyond repair. And what kind of speed are we seeing, and what are the numbers that we're seeing?
Well, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, the city has historically knocked down maybe 50 houses a week. We're now knocking down 200 to 250 every single week.
Before Duggan, the city's demolition plan had been slowed by bureaucracy. Duggan took office in January. He says his new team has been able to streamline the demolition program. Now residents like Kai Belcher are seeing action.
I came home one day, you know, these two houses was down first. Then my mother said they were coming back for the other ones because they had the paper up. So I was, you know, sure that they was going to come back and take care of the rest of them. So it's pretty good.
Last year, the Obama administration and Michigan Governor Rick Snyder helped create the Detroit Blight Task Force. The task force brought together government, foundations, and private groups, some for the first time. Glenda Price co-chaired the task force. She says when everyone started working together, things started to happen.
That you did not see impact because there was no concentrated strategy to go neighborhood by neighborhood where you could actually see a difference.
And you finally have it.
And we finally have it. You can't do one house on the east side, one house in Brightmoor, one house someplace else, and feel as though you've made a difference. You do 3 houses on one block, and by golly, you have made a difference.
So you have a staggering number of blighted properties. I can only understand that there would be a staggering price tag to go with it, to remove them.
Approximately $1 billion.
The city has some of that money in the bank, but it's nowhere near enough to remove all the blight, which is estimated to take 5 years. Where does the money come from a city that's going through a bankruptcy process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so the first $50 million came from the federal government in TARP funds. And I got an application in now for another $50 million. And I think if the federal government continues to see the progress we're making, they'll be supportive.
In the fight against blight, technology is key.
Now click Blessed Property.
Citizens are using a smartphone app that tracks changes in their neighborhoods for better or worse. It's called Blexting, short for blight texting. This is the crowdsourcing of information and comes courtesy of a couple of young Detroit entrepreneurs. Sandra Yu does community outreach for the program.
Loveland Technologies is a tech startup in Detroit, and they just geeks about property and wanting property to be used for the highest and best use.
Norma Heath is president of the West Euclid Block Club in the Midtown area of the city.
But this is a way that you know how to see who owned the property. You see everything that you need to know.
We want Blexing to be part of what it means to be a citizen, You mow your lawn, you take out the trash, you bless properties in your neighborhood.
And I hover over here.
Monique Tate of the nonprofit group Data Driven Detroit hosts some of the Blexting boot camps, training residents across the city.
So having this kind of information available leads to exactly what we want, data-driven decisions. So community groups can decide where are we going to focus our efforts and our attention, because they can easily pull up on the public dashboard a map of their specific neighborhood to see where are the vacancies.
What we recommended and what they are attempting to do is look at what we're defining as tipping point neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods where a little investment will stop the decline.
This is the Marygrove neighborhood, one of the Detroit neighborhoods that's at the tipping point. There's lots of streets just like this one, where you've got homes that are well taken care of, but sandwiched in between others that are vacant and run down. The city is now aggressively targeting homeowners, either clean up your property or lose it. And they're also offering incentives for people to buy homes like this one, to move in and to stay here. The backbone of the community is Marygrove College, here since before the Great Depression. The college is still going strong, but the 2008 recession has done its damage to the housing stock. Gloria Mitchell moved to Marygrove in 1978.
When people talk about Detroit blight and some of the neighborhoods that are up and down, how would you describe how your neighborhood and your street fits into that?
It fits right in the middle. We have quite a mix here now, where it went from working class, it's now retirees, former working people, it's families, new, old. It's everything here.
This Marygrove home is about to be seized by the Detroit Land Bank Authority. The land bank has been in operation for years with little notice. Now, the mayor has hired more staff, including attorneys, computer techs, and a communications director. Craig Foley left Detroit Public Radio to join the team.
Well, the Detroit Land Bank Authority, it's pretty simple, really. We are a place that is a clearinghouse for vacant property in the city of Detroit. Our goal is to either sell it to somebody that wants to live in it, auction it off to get somebody to live in it, and if we don't have any other options, we will demolish the property.
The properties to be auctioned are shown on the Land Bank website.
48201.
For city government, getting all this online is a new frontier.
We like to say that we sort of are building the car at the same time we're building the assembly line. So we really have to adapt and learn from each other and find new strategies, frankly, to get people back into the neighborhoods.
The Land Bank has started a pilot project called the Forgivable Grants Program. In Marygrove, suburban-based Talmer Bank is putting up seed money for home buyers. Money it does not expect to be repaid. Patrick Irvin runs the bank's grant program.
We decided the best thing that we can do to participate is money. And so we stepped forward and we're going to give $1 million of our money in these grants that are forgivable grants for people who want to live in this neighborhood with their families and be here for a long period of time.
Here, auction winners can receive up to $25,000 to fix up their homes if they promise to live in them for 5 years.
Oh, wow, first try.
In Marygrove, Jay Meeks takes possession of the house he won for just over $8,000.
It's structurally solid on the outside. It's a decent size. I like it.
Meeks is 29, an upwardly mobile PhD student who grew up nearby. He lived on the East Coast, but recently returned home.
So this isn't Midtown, this isn't downtown, but this is Northwest Detroit. We are up here, and I'm excited about the opportunity for great things to come and my ability to contribute to them. So,
if the Marygrove pilot project works, other parts of Detroit might get financial incentives like this one. That is, if the city can recruit more charitable lenders to bring more people back into the neighborhoods.
A lot of work to be done. As here, always with me, our MiWeek contributors, Nolan Finley with the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson with the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's always good to see you. And coming out of that, I think that piece that really illustrates, I think, the beginnings of the work that's happening. And we talk about bankruptcy and we talk about getting through this process. Really, it's what's going to happen on the other side and what's going to happen in neighborhoods like Marygrove. So let me ask you first, I'll start with you, Stephen, the impressions of the work that you're starting to be seen.
Well, I mean, this is the real work of turning the city around. It's wonderful what's going on in downtown and midtown, but you've got a lot of private capital moving that now. You've got a lot of stability there and a lot of really good decisions being made about long-term sort of turnaround and stability there. The neighborhoods don't have it. You can go to neighborhoods all over the city and see a lack of private investment, a lack of a plan, blight up and down the blocks. And so this program is the beginning of trying to take some of that on and apply a rational strategy to dealing with, as you point out in the piece, 80,000 empty structures.
80,000 empty structures, and again, I don't think you can underestimate, Nolan, the price tag of $1 billion.
Or the scope of the job. I mean, the mayor said we went from $250 a month to $1,000 a month, and that's great progress, but that's 80 months of work ahead of us. So if anybody thinks you're going to see, you know, this transformation overnight, it took a long time to get here. It's going to take a very long time to get out. 80 months, what's that, 6, 7 years?
Almost 7 years.
That's a long time to ask people in these neighborhoods to be patient and wait. And meanwhile, you've got a stoplight. You can't have any more added to that 80,000. It's a massive task, and you just can't underestimate how far this city fell before the turnaround started, or the work to turn it around started.
And I think that's also the trouble with Blight too, is that you can put a number on it. You can say 80,000, but it's a living, shifting city. And where one street was fine one day, you come back a month from now and things have changed. And I think that's what's interesting about the Blexting, is you're able to go to this database and take a look at properties and even put in and say, look, this has changed a little bit.
Right. I mean, keeping track of it is impossible, and that's how it got this way. Is that the city was unable to even quantify how many structures are empty. And that's not to even talk about who owns them and might be held responsible. So they are doing all the right things in terms of putting the technological infrastructure into place and having a plan. You know, we've got this Blight Authority strategy to deal with this that will move the ball, but it'll be a long time.
And it's essential that this idea of reclaiming some of these homes takes hold. If you could take 20 or 25,000 of those 80,000 buildings and rehab them, sure, that takes the task down somewhat in terms of both expense and time. So it really is good to look at this comprehensively to say, does every house need to be torn down, or can we put people in some of those houses?
That's a really good point, Nolan, about filling up the neighborhoods again. But how do you get people back in to take that risk? I mean, we saw that young man at the end of the piece, Jay Meeks, who's coming back, who has a connection with the neighborhoods because he grew up nearby. But where do you find people that are willing to take, is it really risk?
Yeah, I think it is risk. I mean, I am working on a project now in the house that my family lived in when I was born, near Livernois and Grand River. That house is empty and has been stripped. There are, I think, 15 houses up and down that block that are like that. But there's still people living there, and so it's still a neighborhood that needs attention and help. And so just in trying to figure out what to do with that property, what to do with the property next door, which needs to come down. It's an incredibly daunting task, and the idea of moving your family in there is a whole other burden that I think you're not gonna get to yet. My hope, though, is that you get more people like me, like the young man in your piece, who say, look, I'm from here. I was born in this area, so I'm going to try to do what I can to help turn it around. That kind of connection is something the city really should be playing on.
You make a very important point, though, about bringing a family in, and what does the area have to offer for a family. And I think, Nolan, that then gets in the conversation of what the city is going to look like now in the next 2 years to be bringing in more people, families, now you're talking about the schools, you're talking about that kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, and the schools, I mean, set those aside for a moment because they're still that great unsolved puzzle that no one seems to have an answer for. But as we think about rehab and blight remediation, what have you, you've got to think about doing whole neighborhoods at a time rather than scattershot all over the city. We'll go to this block over here and this block. Fix a whole neighborhood at once so you don't get more blight and you do get people seeing hope, like, well, maybe I can stay or maybe I can come in. They've got to, you've got to say, well, we're not going to get over here just yet. We're going to fix this, and people have to have that sort of patience. As far as the schools go, I mean, we're about to come out of emergency management for the Detroit Public Schools. I don't see the Detroit Public Schools being fixed as a whole. I think we have to rethink this and go to a system of individual schools that focus on excellence, whether they're public, traditional, or public charters or private. Every kid should have a good school to go to, and we've got to get over this notion that we can fix something that's so broken and been broken so long that it just defies fixing.
Taking the blight one step further, and you see the pictures of people demoing those homes and clearing the land. The next step, though, for me is, so what goes in that spot that was just a house there? So do you leave these large spaces on,
I don't think
a block?
you can. I think you have to leverage, and one of the things that I'm trying to do in the neighborhood where I was born is leverage there are lots of people working in different kinds of spaces that can help. So maybe you can get someone like Greening of Detroit to take some of these empty lots and make them into sustainable empty lots as opposed to just vacant lots. Can you get a New Economy Initiative to come into some of these places and help prop up businesses along the commercial corridors? I think it takes, or it's going to take, all of those kinds of resources and efforts to try to say, we're not just tearing down, we're trying to rebuild, and it may not rebuild the way it was before, but it'll be sustainable, it'll be safe, and it'll be attractive for people to want to live there.
And you've got to have some very innovative thinking on this. I mean, some of these neighborhoods, there's so much blight compared to occupied homes. You could actually create mini farms that might be very attractive to an immigrant population.
That's
Say,
right.
just doing things, changing the zoning ordinances to be flexible and be creative is essential here.
And one of the really key points is also talking to the people who live there. In all of these neighborhoods, there are people who have stuck it out for whatever reason through this incredible low point in the city's history. Asking them what they want, what they need, what will make them stay, what will make their lives better is super important. And it's good that the mayor's that the land bank is doing that. But that's going to become more and more important as they get deeper and deeper into these neighborhoods.
And before we leave the conversation about Detroit, Nolan, how important is this now, this transition to the next chapter of management? Last week we saw the city council, they took the vote along with the mayor, and Kevin Orr signed that order, shifting the power of the city back to them.
Well, they got to get it right, and they've got to make every decision with the residents in mind and the future of the city in mind. We can't go back to the days when council was pulled in every direction by special interests and pandered to everybody who screamed the loudest. They've got to get it absolutely right. We can't in 5 years from now be right back looking at insolvency or unbalanced budgets. It's got to work.
Last word on that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got this sort of honeymoon period right now where everyone's holding hands and being nice. That won't last. The politics will take back over, and you've got to have enough people in charge to say, this is important. We got to do this the right way. Otherwise, we'll be back in bankruptcy real quick.